Blech. Well, we got probably most everyone here. So, yeah, Lindsay, if you want to just kick it off and tell us a little bit about what you do and
Sure. So do you want me to start at the beginning, or do you want me to just tell you like what I do now, or?
um maybe just start at the beginning and kind of give us
Oh,
your
sure.
little overview of
Okay.
your career path and
Yeah.
leading up to what you do now.
Okay. Well, I grew up in the UP of Michigan, the Copper Country, like Lena. And I started off with a performance career really young. Like at the age of 12, I was playing bass in my dad's wedding band. And I think by the time I was about 13, I was in two rock bands. So I think I just had musical instincts from the time I was a child, but I was particularly drawn to electronics. My dad had a 2-track RCA open reel tape machine that I figured out how to record on, and then the cassette was invented. So my uncle brought me a cassette player from downstate in Detroit, and I managed to do my first multi-track recording when I was, I think, 13 and a half. I laid down a kick and snare that was in our front porch. I played a little organ and then overdubbed a guitar part, going back and forth between the RCA tape machine and the cassette. And of course, it sounded like crap, but it was my first experiment. But I kind of knew that my life in the UP was pretty limiting. So when I was 17 or 18, I moved to Ann Arbor, where I was in a band called Trees, which ended up having a pretty big following, not only in the UP, but in the Ann Arbor area. And we played the local pubs, Mr. Flood's Party, and all these great bars. But I realized that being in Ann Arbor as a performer would also be limiting. So I was fortunate enough to meet this guy, Jeff Michael, who was like the most gracious teacher and collaborator. He owned a recording studio, and he was in transition trying to start his own thing. The studio that he owned was with another guy named Ben. And so I happened to meet him at the perfect time, because even though he owned the studio with Ben, he was in transition and needed to find a new space. So I had a basement in my duplex in Ann Arbor, and Jeff and I created a little basement recording studio, and we collaborated and recorded demos for people. And he taught me basically how to record on an analog desk to 16 and 24 track tape, and helped me buy my first tape machines, which I started off, went from a 4-track TAC to then an 8-track, and then eventually graduated to a 16-track half-inch machine. So life in Ann Arbor was really comfortable and great, but I had aspirations of becoming a producer, an engineer, and songwriter. And a friend of mine had just moved to Los Angeles and had gotten her, was working on her dissertation in clinical psychology. And she invited me to occupy the extra room that she had in Santa Monica, if I would be willing to move away from Ann Arbor. So I packed up my little Nissan pickup truck with my little recording gear, said goodbye to Jeff, and moved to LA in 1987. And when I first got to LA, it was really scary, because it's just like the big bad city, right? And how was little old me gonna do anything in a city like this? So I started going to songwriter seminars and joined the National Academy of Songwriters. And before I knew it, I connected with a drummer who wanted to get into TV and film and, writing music for TV and film, primarily on-air promotion kind of stuff. And I thought that was really interesting. So he and I set up one of the areas of my bedroom studio as a percussion booth, and the other side of the room for recording guitars. And we started writing some cues that got the attention of CBS television network, and also a bunch of production music companies. So it took about 3 years to really get in the groove with what we were doing. But once we got noticed, we started getting requests from CBS to do specialty promos, which are like 30-second cuts for TV shows that would basically advertise what was going to be coming in next week's episode. So we did that for a number of years, and it was really exciting. And I grew as an engineer because he didn't want anything to do with engineering. He just wanted to play the drums. So I had to really, solicit a lot of advice from engineers that I was meeting in terms of how to really get our live sounding super professional. So basically, that's all a precursor to what happened in the 2000s, when the millennium came about. In the year 2000, I was asked to become the executive producer of a music library called 5 Alarm Music in Pasadena. And I had to find not only an office for us to work out of, and find a sales staff to produce 30 albums of production music. And fortunately, there was a woman who owned this company called DMI. Her name is Tina Clark, who was building a recording studio in Pasadena. So she was like, how about if we house the music library and the studio all in one, and we'll be one big happy family. So I went from being the executive producer of 5 Alarm Music, produced the first 30 albums, and then Tina approached me and said, I want you to become the studio manager now. So I took the producer hat off and started managing a really beautiful recording studio where we had some of the most amazing, talented artists coming in on a regular basis. And I managed that studio for about 4 years. And then in 2005, I decided I wanted to just go all indie and start my own music library and catalogs, and build my own home studio. And I've been here ever since. So that was about 15 years ago. And so now I own Datalight Music, which has 2 music libraries with worldwide distribution. One is called Frameworks Music, and the other is called Ear Parade. Both catalogs have enjoyed placements in TV and film on every major network around the globe. I personally have a nice studio for recording and mixing. I do most of my work in Pro Tools, although in the past, since the pandemic, I've gotten into Logic, and I'm really liking it so much. And true to my long-standing penchant for shiny objects, we have an impressive complement of studio equipment, including a lot of beautiful microphones and a harem of guitars. So I provide expert recording engineers and producers to accommodate projects and clients. So if a mixing engineer wants to come in here, he or she pretty much has all the tools they need. So I have a really outstanding list of musicians and singers and voiceover artists to cover anyone's needs. And of course, everyone's doing everything remote right now. So I think I'm kind of like in the right place at the right time. And, you know, I think we're about to meet a lot of challenges with the pandemic going forward. Like, who's going to want our music? you know, I mean, hopefully the licensing continues. But that's kind of the nutshell of how I got to where I am today.
Could you talk a little bit about like the music licensing kind of business and, um, how you make music for that and, the skills that are involved and all of that?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I started doing the production music, you know, like I said, with my percussionist friend back in the 90s. And he and I learned uh, that most music for licensing is gifted in simplicity, you know, really having a strong groove, um, and a nice bed that isn't necessarily too melodic, um, but very rhythmic in nature. And so when I'm personally producing production music, I always start there, you know, with the basic foundation. And I offer mixes sometimes with vocals and sometimes with busy melodies and stuff. But what ends up getting used usually, because television and film are so dialogue oriented, the stuff that usually gets used is the instrumental versions and the beds that are really simple. Um, the percussion and rhythm instruments always, you know, play the biggest role in the stuff that gets licensed the most, in my experience. I've been doing a lot of electronic music lately. In fact, this past week, we've been working, myself and three other composers are working on a project called Finding the Solution. And it's kind of mystery and light tension music. And we offer like three different versions. One that might have, you know, strings and brass. One that's just an electronics bed that just kind of has quizzical sorts of sounds. And another that's just the drums and bass. Um, it seems that these days in production music, people want a lot of stems, you know, and so that's been a big part of what I do. Once a composition is recorded, I'll spend a few hours just making sure I have the stems in case anybody wants them, and they, you know, usually do. So, you know, stems meaning just drums and bass, just rhythm instruments, just melodies, just percussion, um, just strings if you've recorded, you know, a string section, stuff like that. But if anybody has any questions about that sort of thing, I'm happy to answer, of course.
Anyone have any questions so far? We, our class can be a little bit on the quiet side.
That's cool. Do you have any other like specific? Oh, nothing right now. Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks. Thank you so much. Um, let's see. I'm just trying to think. When it comes to production music, it seems that most companies are trying to be the answer to everyone's, you know, prayers. I want, you know, human drama, action drama, electronica, rock, jazz. And if you can be all that, that's great. But my particular catalogs have had a little bit more of a focus. Like um, back when there were lifestyle things to write for, like travel and leisure and stuff like that, I was really doing well in that area, like home improvement. You know, you're working on a show about fixing your deck, then you would come to my, you know, to my catalog. How to remodel your kitchen. Just come to Frameworks Music, right? So that's basically what I do all day long. And I mean, I do all the recording and mixing, and most of the composers end up sending me their compositions. They'll send me individual tracks, and I will mix music for them because they feel that I have a better sense of, what is needed in terms of, the final mix. I'm happy to share mixes with you guys too. I can post, after this is over, I can post some examples if you want me to.
I think that'd be great. I think that'd be
Yeah.
excellent.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if you're like, I don't know if you're on a phone right now or what, if you could show us your little setup there.
Oh,
Or
I'm actually in my live room,
I
but let me see. Let me see. I
if
turned
not,
the
you could just
lights
talk
off
us through
everywhere
it.
else. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna do that. I mean, I just have like a small mixing desk with a few outboard analog pieces. I've got a Neve, what is it? The 1072 dual mic pre. I have a Manley Vox box, a Pacifica mic pre, a Ready, which is made by Pacifica, I think, preamp for recording bass and keyboards. I have a patch bay. Um, the microphones I use, I have the Perlman microphone, of course, the TM1. I have a Neumann M149. I have an old RCA ribbon mic from the 1960s, which is just so beautiful to use on brass and strings. Like anytime I have a sax player over, they always want to use the RCA. I also acquired some ribbon mics from the company called AEA. I have a pair of their N2As, which are kind of like the Royer cigar style ribbon mic. And then I also have one Royer. I have a pair of Neumann KM184s and an AKG 421, I think it is, or 451, which I use on acoustic guitars. Um, yeah, I have a lot of microphones. Lots of guitars, a Gretsch Tennessee Rose, a Rickenbacker 12. Let's see if I can take the camera and show you some of the guitars.
Yeah, I do know we have some guitar nerds in this class. So.
Yes, there's some of them. Wall of guitars.
Yeah.
And lots of pedals, lots of pedals. I have a pedal board that I have just, in my mixing room that I, just use when I'm actually doing final mixing. And then I have one in my guitar room. Always adding stuff to those pedal boards.
So since you do so much recording of yourself, do you feel like you mix as you go? Do you kind of just try and get out all your ideas and then mix after? Is mixing part of your composition process? Um,
Yeah, and mixing is actually part of the composition process. I think that I like to start with, layers of, I'll usually start with drum samples. A friend of mine who is a fabulous drummer percussionist, who is originally from Maine, who works in LA part-time, just gave me 3 volumes of what he's calling his quarantine loops. And so lately I've been using those as my foundation with, and I chop them up. So the first thing that I do when I do a composition is take one of those loops and find, a 2 or 4 bar section that will work great as like a verse. So I look at it, everything that I write from a songwriting perspective. So I'll start with the verse, and then I'll try to find some drops or stops in his playing to lead into a B section, and then a bigger section for the chorus. And then I'll go and search into some of the virtual instruments that I use to try to find um, other sections that make sense. I like to use a lot of the native instruments, contact instruments like Damage and Evolve, and stuff like that that has grooves built into it. I've also recently gotten into Output's monthly subscription for Arcade. Have you heard about Arcade? Yeah,
Yeah, arcade
and
is really cool. I think especially
yeah, I
like
love it.
if you're trying to get a feel for like what is out there, it's just you get so much. So,
Right. Yeah, it's such a great subscription thing. I love it. So, I can usually find things to complement that initial rhythm track that I'm writing between, the contact instruments, the arcade, and then my quarantine drum loops. And then, I'll usually find a bass line to go along with those sections. And I will usually, like you're saying, mix as I go. I'll kind of get a mix of the drum and bass, and then start adding my keyboard layers or rhythm guitars. I'll pull out some guitars and just start adding that layer. So I really do kind of I tend to bust things in groups. I'll take the drums and percussion that I've acquired through loops and create a mix bus for that and give that a certain treatment. And then I'll do a mix bus for all my guitars, one for keyboards, so that when I go and do my final mix, I can pretty much control my final mix from just the bus volumes that I've, created in either Pro Tools or Logic. But I'm still trying to get around Logic a little bit. I'm trying to get deeper into it, and it's fantastic. I don't know why it took me so long to get there.
yeah,
You've been using it for a long time, right?
I have. I've been using it since I was 13. So,
Oh my God, that's so great. So what do you love? What do you like most about Logic compared to Pro Tools?
I personally find some of the tools are just easier to use and easier to find the tools that I need. Sometimes in Pro Tools, if I'm trying to figure out how to do something that I don't already know how to do, I can't even figure out what it is I need to Google to figure out what like
Right.
key command it is. And like sometimes in the help documentation, you can only find things through the key commands, right? Um,
Right.
and like some of the automatic comping, the way that Logic sets that up is a lot better than playlisting and Pro Tools for me.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And then I also I really like the flex pitch and flex time more than Pro Tools elastic pitch and um, time
So
personally.
can you hear the difference between the two? Uh,
It's not so much that I can hear the difference, it's just ease of use.
uh-huh.
Yeah. I've so it
Yeah, I
also
haven't gone there yet.
yeah, it's really easy to use and sounds pretty good for what's, baked into the program. Like if I'm doing
Yeah.
final tuning on something, I might use Melodyne or a little bit more robust tuning algorithm, but a lot of times like if I'm just tracking scratch vocals, I'll just throw them through the Logic tuner and then just turn up the tuning all the way and I'm like, all right, I can work with this as I'm like continuing to
That's
write or like
great.
doing a rough mix. So yeah.
Excellent.
Um
Sounds like I should take Logic lessons from you.
I mean I do know the program very well after using it for
That's so
ever.
great.
Um yeah, I maybe you can talk a little bit more about your like mixing process or like maybe things that you the way you approach things now that has changed over the years, where you kind of like, I wish I could go back to myself when I was just starting to, learn how to mix or learn how to mix in the digital world and like
Right.
call myself this. So, do you have any
Well,
of those
yeah,
kind of things?
yeah, actually, I think that the master fader has been something that, back in the day when I was recording to tape, I didn't really patch many things into my master fader like I do now, right? Like now, I've found that the tools that Isotope offers, like Ozone 8, um, has really like kind of transformed the way I treat my master fader in the very end. I love the assistant feature on it, although I feel like whenever I use the assistant that it's overly hyped, right? So I back off their maximizer quite a bit. But the one thing that I learned way back when I was using tape was that tape had a natural compression that was so beautiful that we didn't need stuff like Ozone 8, or the Universal Audio Ampex machine because we were going to tape, right? But these days, in addition to using the Ozone tools, um, I've been dialing in some tape compression on the master fader and usually on my drum group to just give it more of a wide feeling. And I find that the UAD Ampex machine works great, both on the master fader and the drum bus. But also the Studer machine really has some width to it and some natural compression that's just beautiful. But I tend to not use the presets. I tend to just kind of dial in what sounds good to my ears. So yeah, so my process has changed in that, back in the day, in the beginning, there was no like, oh, I have to add this and add that to the master fader. It's like, yeah, um, I do that stuff now, and it sounds great. It's wonderful to have these tools.
Yeah, I mean, we're lucky that we don't have to be splicing tape and
Right.
so though
Yeah.
if we had a tape machine at the university, I would make these guys do a tape project. So maybe
Well,
one day.
it's good to do it.
I
I'll
did it.
never forget. Oh, go ahead. I'm
I was
sorry.
gonna say I had a mentor who made me record the tape when I was in high school, and just to understand the process, and like also it helps you understand like the sound and the history, and there's so much there, but um it is just a pain in the ass.
It is totally. And I accidentally, when the first time I worked with Jeff, and we actually went outside of my basement studio into somebody else's room, and we took a reel of tape and we recorded 3 songs with drums, and then we went back to my place with the tape, and I accidentally hit record, and I lost the first 16 bars of the drummer's performance. And so Jeff is like, oh, okay, now we have to get it from somewhere else. So we had to change the arrangement on that tune, but that was like, I'm so glad that doesn't happen anymore. Tape. Wow. But the other thing I learned from Jeff that I incorporate on a daily basis is just a channel strip. You know, having your EQ, your compression, all that stuff just kind of in a row, and knowing how to use it, how to mix with your ears while you're, moving dials. And I always, pretty much on every channel that I have in Logic or Pro Tools, I add the Neve 1073 EQ. And, after I've recorded a pass of something, I'll listen to how it sounds with the drums and bass, and then I will blend with that tool because I just think it really sounds like the original hardware piece. It's really beautiful. Do you guys use the Universal Audio stuff at all? Or?
No, we don't. We don't have
Okay.
much on the really the plugin front at this point, and we didn't get that much time in the studio this semester at all because
All right. Yeah.
coronavirus.
For
Um,
obvious reasons. Yeah.
yeah, but we have a really nice SSL desk, and so
Oh, nice.
yeah, we have a SSL duality. So that's what everyone here has been learning on with a Pro Tools rig. So.
Oh, beautiful. Can I have it? Can I have it while
No,
you're not using it?
no, that's mine now.
Oh, good. I love it.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a saga to get everything installed. So now that it's there, it's staying
Wow.
there.
Very cool.
Yeah, it is. It's a nice setup.
Are you guys experimenting with miking techniques,
Yeah,
or are you pretty much doing stuff in the box?
definitely talking about miking. That was one of the few things we had time to do in the studio is just um, kind of have these guys play with traditional stereo mic techniques and then maybe just kind of move the microphones around, listen to differences in width and quality on distance on like an acoustic guitar and stuff like that. So
Oh, very nice. Very nice. Well, what is your go-to for an acoustic guitar?
um this was a question on our midterm exam, so any of the students can also answer because I know you all have an answer. I've read it.
Come on, come on.
My go-to is I do a spaced pair down with uh I like SM81s or something. And I'll do one down at the by the body below the bridge and then one at the 12th fret. And then sometimes I'll
Nice.
also throw like a KSM 44 a little further away to get a really solid center image. Then I can
Nice.
pan those out hard.
Sounds like some really good mics to use. When I was working at Firehouse, there's a famous jazz engineer that was doing something similar to what you're talking about. Only he used a KM 180 or KM 84. It's the predecessor to the 184, just below the bridge. And then he put an M149 about 18 inches from the 12th fret, and that it captured that part of the guitar, but it also kind of gave a nice center image.
Yeah.
So yeah, so a larger diaphragm than um, at the 12th fret is what you're using.
Well, I'll use two small diaphragm. I do like a three mic technique. So I'll do a small diaphragm at the 12th fret and a small diaphragm on the body, and then further away I'll use a large diaphragm.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
What about you? What are some of your go-to techniques for miking different instruments?
Well, let's see, for upright bass, which I record a lot, um, back in the day when my bass player was allowed to come over. Um, he'll be in the room I'm in now, my little live room, and I will put I'll use three mics. I'll use the KM 184 at the fingers, where his hands are on the fretboard, kind of halfway up. I'll put the M149 at the bridge, or what do I have? A Neumann U67. And then I will do a room mic about 18 inches away from the instrument in the center of the room. And I usually use the RCA ribbon mic for that. And it's a really fat sound. It's so beautiful. So. And then I have cellists that I record a lot, and for them, I will put a combination of the RCA ribbon mic and the Neumann U67. Um, Again, kind of bridge and fingers, but a little bit further away so that the cello doesn't sound too barky.
Yeah.
Um,
When you do electric guitars, do you normally DI or do you record amps?
I record amps. I have a couple amps. I have my dad's old Masco amp, which is a really gnarly sounding tube amp from 1947, which I recently had restored. And I will, put a ribbon mic right in front of the speaker, as well as an SM57, and then, just go into in my patch bay in my live room, I have a guitar combo amp feed. So I can close the door to my live room, really turn up the amp, and just monitor it in the recording room, but sit there with my guitar. So that's kind of fun.
Nice.
Yeah. Then I also have a Fender Princeton that used to belong to Dave Perlman. And that one's super fun for different songs too. A lot of harmonica players like to play through my dad's old Masco amp and really crank it.
Huh.
It's kind of interesting, with their hand mics.
Yeah. Yeah, the little green bullets.
Right.
Yeah. For my students, you guys will be hearing from Dave Perlman on our Monday lecture. We're doing
Oh, you are?
Well, we're not doing a full lecture with him. We're doing little 10-minute snippets from a bunch of people I know about what they do, so everyone can get kind of a good idea of a bunch of different jobs in the audio industry. So Dave sent in a video for that, and
Oh, that's so cool.
he's a very successful mic maker and musician and all around interesting guy. So
Yeah, super interesting cat.
yeah.
Yeah, Dave has taught me a lot too. He'll come over here sometimes and record pedal steel or dobro tracks. And whenever he plays dobro, he likes to be, in the ISO room with usually a ribbon mic right above the 12th fret. So he'll set the dobro in his lap and have the mic kind of at a little angle. And for the pedal steel, we'll usually go through the Princeton, or he'll bring over his deluxe if he doesn't want to get his back broken, he'll use the Princeton. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to ask you one more question, and then I'm going to ask my students to ask you some questions. So I'll give you some time to
Okay.
think about something, guys. But my question is just, what is your favorite part of your job?
Oh, my favorite part of my job is that I get to do music. I get to, connect with melodies and rhythms every day of my life, that I get to walk out to my studio in my pajamas and, put my head between two beautiful speakers and just work on music.
Yeah, that's the dream, right?
Yep.
All right, guys. What kind of questions do you have? I know we got to have some questions. Got some composers in the group. They might have questions on composition or licensing or anything like that, or any more.
Oh, must have pedals.
Yeah.
Must have pedals. Okay. Let's see. Well, there's a pedal that I love called Karma. Let's see if I can grab this guy here. Oh, well, let's see. I'm gonna do this. Okay. Karma. This thing is just the coolest because it just gives you a little bit of distortion. So even when I'm recording with an acoustic guitar or playing live with acoustic, I always dial in just a little bit of distortion on the Karma. My other must-have is the Callisto by who makes this? The Catalan Bread Company. The chorus is really, really cool, and I just love it because I'm a chorus addict. I just love those super watery sounds. Let's see, what else? The Strymon uh, Big Sky is my favorite reverb pedal.
Strymon El Capitan is my favorite delay pedal. That's on my must
Oh
pedal
God,
list.
I'm kind of lusting after that right now. So it's your favorite?
Oh yeah, I always have it on my board.
Oh, lovely. They make some great stuff.
Oh yeah. Above that looks like Thomas asked a question too about what would you say would be the best first steps towards getting your work seen and getting more jobs for TV and films?
Let's see. I would say getting your work seen would be to reach out like to someone like myself, which you're welcome to do, or any of the other, kind of the real prominent music libraries out there, like Universal Music, Five Alarm Music, Current Music. Um, Find out who's accepting submissions, and maybe just run stuff by a producer who's been doing it for a long time. That would be step number one, and just get some feedback. Like, I'm happy to give anybody feedback about a composition that they think would be great for TV and film. Maybe send me an email and say, I think this would be great for a CSI type show. Okay, well, why do you think that? Send me an email, send me a sample of what you're writing, and I'll write you back with some feedback.
Take her up on that, guys.
Yeah, do it, please. Always looking for new blood. I think you're welcome.
All right, any other questions?
Have you had any troubles being yes. Okay. I have been challenged being a woman engineer, but less so now. It seems that this is the time for all of us to kind of step forward. I've been really involved with the producers and engineers wing of NARIS. I'm a committee member on the LA chapter, and there are so many women on the chapter now. When I first joined, even 6 years ago, I was one of two. Now I'm one of about 9 or 10, which is so great. But people just wouldn't take me seriously. They would say, "Well, yeah, hey, that sounds great. Who are you going to have mix it? Are you going to call Gabe? Are you going to call Don?" And I would say, "Well, I'm going to mix it." Oh, really? Okay. And so just it took me so many um, times of just kind of convincing people that I can do it. I'm an engineer. I grew up as an engineer, and I'm good at it. So I think people are more open to us now than they were before, and people like Lena around. The future looks bright. The future looks bright for all of us.
I'll add on to that because the Women's Audio Mission out of San Francisco, I believe, they're definitely the biggest kind of group of female engineers, and they've been doing pretty incredible conferences for the last few years. I got to speak at one, and like Linda Perry was there, and Emily Lazar, just these huge names.
Great.
But during, these quarantine times, they're launching an online platform to have, live seminars and stuff like that. So Nicole, you should definitely look at the Women's Audio Mission and the work that they're doing, because it's
Is Leslie Ann Jones a part of it?
Yeah, she was also at the conference I was at.
Nice.
Yeah, it's run by a woman named Terry Winston, and she's just a badass. It's the only way to
Yeah,
describe her.
thanks to you, I found out about her, and checked out her stuff. She is amazing.
Yeah, so there are some pretty cool like groups popping up for women in the industry, and I think like Lindsay is saying, it's getting better, which is, it's been like the statistics have been the same since like the 80s. Like it's always been like 2 to 3% of the industry is female. And I think finally there are some initiatives happening to break out of that with the Grammys Women in the Mix initiative and Wham
Mhm.
really getting a good stronghold. And I think the next decade is going to be the decade of women finally
Yeah, I think so too.
coming to
There's
power.
also there's a website called She Is the Music, where any female engineer can, you can just register, put, you know, what your style is, you know, are you good at live recording, you know, where are you located, and they're trying to get She Is the Music to be a national platform for people looking for female engineers. So that's a good thing.
All right, we got anything else, guys?
You're welcome.
All right, it seems like it
All
might
right.
be wrapping up then.
Should I give you guys an email to communicate to me?
Yes.
Okay. This is the best one for the music stuff, and it's the name of one of my companies. It is Ear Parade, EARPARADE at Gmail. Yep,
Cool.
you're welcome. So send me some stuff. I want to hear. I want to hear what you guys do.
Yeah.
Yeah, tickle my ears. And I will, Lena, should I just send you a couple tracks that are in progress and send you an example of how, what I'd like for you to see is the difference between a full mix, an underscore, and a light mix, which is how production music kind of works.
Yeah.
Um,
Please send
okay,
that to me and then I'll forward it to the class and they'll all have access to that.
okay, yeah, and thank you for your time, and I wish all of you the best, and you know, get out there and mix.
Yes. Thank
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, especially now, we got a lot of time inside, so
Yeah.
good time to make music.
Yeah. Lena, thank you for having me. Thank you for asking me. And
Yeah,
my
thanks so much
pleasure,
for
really.
coming.
Yeah. You all take care.
All right, everyone.
Okay. Be
Bye.
safe. Be healthy. Bye.